I never expected to hear from Marissa again, especially after 3 years of blissful silence. But there she was, her name flashing on my phone screen, disrupting the calm evening I was spending with my daughter, Ivy, in our cozy Oregon home. "Guess who's back in town, Elaine? And guess what else? I had a baby. You should send a gift, you know." Marissa's voice was as smug as I remembered. I could almost see her self-satisfied smirk through the phone. I held back a sigh, forcing politeness. "That's wonderful news, Marissa. Congratulations." Her laughter grated my nerves. "Oh, Elaine, always playing nice. You know, I'm living the dream with Derek. Remember him? Your ex-husband?" The way she said your ex-husband dripped with condescension. I bit my tongue, keeping my voice steady. "Yes, I remember. How could I forget?" The memory of Derek and our failed marriage still stung, even more so knowing he was now with Marissa. Marissa's voice oozed fake sympathy. "Still a single mom, huh? That's too bad. Meanwhile, Derek and I are just perfect together. You should see the house we got. It's a pity you couldn't keep a man like him." I wanted to lash out, tell her she was welcome to a man who valued luxury over loyalty, but I held back. My daughter, Ivy, was watching me with curious eyes, and I couldn't let her see her mother break. "Thank you for letting me know," I said, my voice as cold as an Oregon winter. "I have to go now. Goodbye, Marissa." I ended the call before she could respond, feeling a mixture of anger and a strange sense of déjà vu. Marissa had always been like this, taking pleasure in flaunting her so-called victories, especially if they came at my expense. As I looked at Ivy, her innocent eyes full of questions, I realized that this was more than just a petty call from an old rival. Marissa, with her twisted way of finding joy in others' misery, had reopened old wounds, reminding me of a past betrayal that I had tried so hard to forget. It was back in high school when I first met Marissa. We were opposites in every way. I was the quiet one, content with my books and music, while Marissa was the life of the party, always surrounded by friends. Despite our differences, or perhaps because of them, we became friends, or so I thought. The most painful memory was of my high school crush, Alex. He was a senior, kind and handsome, and I had been hopelessly in love with him. I had written him a letter, pouring out my feelings, too shy to tell him in person. Marissa had offered to give him the letter, but she betrayed me. She replaced my name with hers in the letter and told Alex that my feelings were just a cruel joke. Alex had confronted me, hurt and confused, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. The humiliation was too much. Marissa and Alex dated briefly after that, but it didn't last. She moved on quickly, as she always did, leaving a trail of hurt behind her. And now, years later, she had done it again, with Derek. I shook my head, trying to clear the bitter thoughts. I had to focus on the present, on Ivy. She was my world now, and I wouldn't let Marissa's pettiness affect our lives. But as I tucked Ivy into bed that night, a resolve began to form within me. Marissa had taken too much from me already. It was time she learned that I wasn't the same Elaine she used to know. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her parade around with her ill-gotten happiness. The game was on, Marissa, and this time I wasn't going to lose. As the Oregon rain tapped against the window, I found myself lost in the memories of high school, a time when life seemed simpler, yet so complicated. Marissa and I were unlikely friends, brought together by our shared love for theater. I was the shy tech girl, content with managing the sound system, while Marissa was the star on stage, always in the spotlight. We were a study in contrasts, she, the radiant sun, I, the quiet moon. But back then, I thought we complemented each other. My crush on Alex, a senior in the drama club, was my best-kept secret, or so I thought. He was everything I wasn't, confident, outgoing, and incredibly popular. Writing that letter to him was the bravest thing I'd ever done. Entrusting it to Marissa was the biggest mistake. The day Alex confronted me, accusing me of playing a cruel joke on him, was the day my trust in friendship shattered. Marissa watched from afar, a triumphant smile on her face as I stammered, unable to explain the truth. It was a scene straight out of a teenage drama, except the pain was real. I thought leaving for Boston for college would help me escape those painful memories. It was there I met Derek, a man who seemed to be everything I needed. He was kind and understanding, a stark contrast to the high school boys I'd known. Our relationship moved quickly. perhaps too quickly, but I was caught up in the whirlwind of romance. Derek proposed during a sunset on the Boston Harbor, and it felt like a dream. But the dream started to crumble soon after we said, "I do." The man I married began to change, or perhaps he just revealed who he truly was. His love for luxury and extravagance was something I had overlooked, blinded by love. Our fights became frequent, always about money or my lack of enthusiasm for his lavish lifestyle. "You just don't get it, Elaine," he would say. "Life is about enjoying the best things. But what about love, trust, and respect? Weren't they the best things in life?" When I became pregnant with Ivy, I thought it would bring us closer, but it only drove us further apart. Derek's presence became sporadic, his nights out longer. And then the ultimate betrayal, discovering his affair with Marissa. It was a text message that broke the news, a picture of them together, looking disgustingly happy. Derek's words, "I've found someone who truly understands me," echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. Now, as I sat in the quiet of my living room with the rain as my only companion, I realized the pattern in my life. Marissa had always been there, lurking in the background, ready to snatch away my happiness. She was like a shadow, a dark presence that I had failed to recognize. But this time, I was determined to step out of that shadow. Marissa had taken Alex, she had taken Derek, but she wouldn't take my dignity. I would fight back, not for revenge, but for closure. I picked up my phone, scrolling through contacts until I found Alex's number. It had been years since we last spoke, but it was time to clear the air. It was time to confront the past and reclaim my story. "Hello, Alex? It's Elaine. We need to talk." The day Derek and I got married was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it marked the beginning of a series of events that would eventually lead to my greatest heartache. Our wedding was nothing short of extravagant. Derek, always one for grandeur, had insisted on a lavish celebration at one of Boston's most opulent hotels. The guest list was a who's who of the city's elite, along with friends and family. Among those friends was Marissa, reluctantly invited due to our intertwined social circles. I should have known something was amiss when Marissa arrived. Dressed in a flamboyant red gown that screamed for attention, she was the antithesis of a typical wedding guest. Throughout the evening, her laughter was too loud, her comments too pointed, her presence too imposing. As Derek took the stage, his charm on full display as he serenaded the crowd, I noticed Marissa inching closer to him. She had always craved the spotlight, and now she was basking in the reflected glow of my husband's performance. I brushed off the uneasy feeling, convincing myself it was just Marissa being Marissa. But after the wedding, things changed. Derek's behavior became increasingly erratic. Our fights escalated, often about his spending habits, or my so-called lack of ambition. "You just don't understand the finer things in life, Elaine," he would sneer, his words cutting deeper each time. During my pregnancy with Ivy, Derek's absences became more frequent. I was left alone, navigating the complexities of impending motherhood without the support of my partner. The man I had married, the man who had vowed to be by my side, was slipping away. Then came the night that shattered everything. I found text messages on Derek's phone, exchanges with Marissa filled with a familiarity that made my heart sink. The realization hit me like a freight train. Marissa and Derek were having an affair. Confronting Derek led to a heated argument, one that ended with him coldly stating, "Maybe Marissa understands me better than you ever did." His words were a knife to my heart. The betrayal by a husband was one thing, but by a friend, that was a wound of a different kind. I left Boston with Ivy, returning to the solace of my small Oregon hometown. Away from the city's glitz and Derek's betrayals, I found comfort in the familiarity of home. Yet Marissa's shadow loomed over my newfound peace. As I lay in bed that night, replaying the events in my mind, a fierce determination took hold. Marissa had taken everything from me, my first love, my husband, my happiness. But she wouldn't take my future. It was time for Marissa to understand the consequences of her actions. I wouldn't let her get away with it this time. I would expose her for who she truly was, and in doing so, find my redemption. With that resolve, I drifted into a restless sleep, dreams of revenge quietly brewing in the back of my mind. Returning to Oregon with Ivy was like stepping into a different world, one far removed from the chaos and heartbreak of Boston. Here, in the quiet small-town life, I found a semblance of peace. But the tranquility was short-lived, shattered by Marissa's haunting presence in my life, even from afar. Marissa's message about her life with Derek was like a poison, seeping into my newfound happiness and tainting it with bitterness. She flaunted her life with Derek, not out of joy but out of spite, relishing the chance to twist the knife she had already driven deep into my heart. As I sat in my childhood bedroom, Ivy asleep in her crib, I scrolled through my social media feed, only to be ambushed by pictures of Marissa and Derek. There they were, looking disgustingly perfect together, their smiles a stark contrast to the pain they had caused. Marissa's latest post was a picture of them in a luxurious house, Derek's arm possessively wrapped around her. The caption read, "Living the dream with my soulmate." Each word felt like a deliberate jab, a reminder of what she had taken from me. Anger bubbled inside me, a fiery mix of betrayal and indignation. Marissa had always been a master manipulator, playing people like chess pieces for her amusement. But this time, her game had gone too far. She had stolen my husband, my sense of security, and tried to rob me of my dignity. I knew I couldn't let her win. Marissa thrived on attention and adoration, but what she feared most was exposure, the world seeing her for the manipulative, heartless person she was. It was time for her facade to crumble. With determination, I began to plan. I reached out to old friends, gathering bits and pieces of information about Marissa and Derek's life together. Each story painted a picture of a relationship built on lies and deceit. I also reconnected with people from our high school days, including those who knew about Marissa's betrayal with Alex. As I pieced together the narrative of her past manipulations, a pattern emerged, one that would be crucial in exposing her true nature. One evening, as I was poring over messages and emails, Ivy toddled into the room, her innocent eyes filled with curiosity. Seeing her, a wave of clarity washed over me. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about protecting my daughter from the toxic influence of people like Marissa. "Ivy," I said, lifting her into my lap, "Mommy is going to make sure no one ever hurts us again. We're going to be just fine, you and me." As Ivy nestled into my arms, her presence a comforting weight, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Marissa might have thought she had won, but the game was far from over. It was my move now, and I was playing for keeps. The autumn leaves in Oregon were turning a fiery red, much like the burning resolve within me. My plan to expose Marissa's true character was taking shape, but an unexpected encounter added a new dimension to my scheme. It was at a local community theater where fate played its hand. I had taken Ivy to see a children's play, hoping to distract myself from the brewing storm in my mind. As the audience applauded the final act, the director stepped onto the stage to thank everyone. My heart skipped a beat. It was Alex, my high school crush. After the play, I gathered my courage and approached him. "Alex, I'm Elaine." "We were in drama club together in high school," I said, introducing myself and Ivy. Recognition dawned on his face. "Elaine, wow, it's been ages. What brings you here?" I hesitated, then decided to be upfront. There was a misunderstanding back in high school that I never got to clear up. Over coffee, with Ivy playing quietly by my side, I told Alex everything, about the letter, Marissa's betrayal, and how it had affected me. To my surprise, Alex was genuinely sympathetic. "I always wondered about that," he said, shaking his head. "Marissa and I didn't last long. She always seemed off." As we talked, I realized how much I had misjudged Alex back then. He was not just the popular senior, he was kind, understanding, and, surprisingly, still single. The conversation shifted to life, parenthood, and our current pursuits. Alex's interest in theater had turned into a career, and he was now a respected director. He listened intently as I spoke about my love for sound design, a passion I had nurtured despite the chaos of my personal life. "That's impressive," he said. "You know, we're looking for someone to help with sound design for our next play. Would you be interested?" The offer took me by surprise. I'd have to think about it, with Ivy and everything." "Take your time," he said, smiling. "It would be great to work with you again, Elaine." As I left the coffee shop, a plan began to form in my mind. Working with Alex could be the perfect opportunity to rebuild my life, both professionally and personally. It was a chance for me to step out of Marissa's shadow and reclaim my story. But more than that, it was a chance for revenge. Alex, a link to Marissa's past, could be the key to exposing her. With him by my side, I could show the world Marissa's true colors. As I tucked Ivy into bed that night, I felt a sense of hope for the first time in a long while. Marissa had taken so much from me, but she hadn't broken me. I was still standing, and I was ready to fight back. "Mommy's got work to do," I whispered to Ivy as she drifted off to sleep. The stage was set, and it was time for Marissa's final act. The opportunity to confront Marissa presented itself unexpectedly. She had thrown a lavish party at her and Derek's house, a spectacle designed to flaunt their ostentatious lifestyle. I hesitated at first, but then realized it was the perfect stage to unveil Marissa's true self. Dressed modestly yet elegantly, I arrived with Ivy in tow. The house was abuzz with guests, laughter echoing off the walls. Marissa, draped in an extravagant dress, played the perfect hostess, her laughter ringing louder than the rest. "Elaine, how nice of you to come!" Marissa greeted me with a saccharine smile, her eyes scanning me dismissively. "And you brought Ivy too. How quaint." Ivy clung to my hand, sensing the tension. I smiled reassuringly at her and turned to face Marissa. "Thank you for inviting us, Marissa. Your home is quite something." "Oh, it is, isn't it?" Marissa gloated. "Derek has done so well for himself, not that I expected anything less." As the night progressed, I watched as Marissa flitted between guests, her mask of charm never slipping. But I knew her too well. Beneath the surface lurked a conniving, selfish woman who thrived on others' misfortunes. I found Derek standing alone on the balcony, his eyes distant. "Derek," I said, approaching him cautiously. He turned, surprise registering on his face. "Elaine, I didn't expect you to come." "We need to talk," I said firmly, "about Marissa." Derek's expression hardened. "What about her?" "It's time you knew the truth about the woman you left your family for," I said, my voice steady. "Marissa isn't who you think she is." I revealed everything. Her manipulations in high school, the letter incident with Alex, and her pattern of betrayals. Derek listened, his face growing pale with each word. I had no idea," he stammered, the facade of his perfect life crumbling. Just then Marissa appeared, her smile faltering as she saw us talking. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. "Derek, why don't you tell her?" I challenged, stepping back to watch the unraveling of Marissa's carefully constructed world. Derek faced Marissa, his newfound knowledge casting a shadow over their relationship. "Marissa, Elaine told me about your past, about everything." Marissa's eyes flashed with panic, then anger. "Elaine, you always were a jealous, spiteful—" "No, Marissa," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. "I'm not the one who's spiteful. You are. You've built your life on lies and manipulation, but it ends tonight." The guests, drawn by the commotion, began to gather around us. Marissa's mask slipped, revealing the vindictive person I had always known. She tried to deny everything, but the truth was out. As the party descended into chaos with whispers and shocked expressions, I took Ivy's hand and left. Behind us, Marissa's world was falling apart, the consequences of her actions finally catching up to her. Ivy looked up at me, her eyes wide. "Mommy, are you okay?" I smiled, a genuine smile of relief. "Yes, sweetie, we're going to be just fine." The aftermath of Marissa's party was the talk of the town for weeks. The facade of her perfect life had crumbled, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. But as the dust settled, I found myself not in a state of triumph, but in quiet reflection. In the weeks that followed, I poured my energy into the sound design for the community theater, working alongside Alex. Our collaboration was a refreshing change, and through it, I rediscovered my passion for music and sound. Ivy thrived too, making friends at the theater and even taking a small role in an upcoming play. Her laughter and joy were a balm to my soul, a reminder of what truly mattered. Marissa, on the other hand, seemed to unravel further with each passing day. Her social media posts, once filled with bragging and luxury, became sporadic and tinged with desperation. Derek had left her, unable to reconcile the woman he loved with the truth of her manipulations. One chilly evening, as Ivy and I walked home from the theater, my phone rang. It was Marissa. Her voice, once so confident and mocking, was now tinged with desperation. "Elaine, I need your help," she pleaded. "Everyone has turned against me. I have nothing." Her words should have brought me satisfaction, but all I felt was a deep sense of pity. "Marissa, you brought this on yourself. You hurt a lot of people, including me." I know I did, but I'm alone now. I thought you might understand, being a single mom and all, she said, her voice cracking. I stopped walking, Ivy looking up at me with curious eyes. Marissa, being a single mom doesn't make me weak. It makes me strong enough to know when to help and when to walk away. So you're just going to leave me like this? Marissa's voice was a mix of anger and despair. I'm not leaving you, Marissa. You left yourself a long time ago. I hope you find your way back, I said, and with that I ended the call. As Ivy and I continued our walk home, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had come full circle, from a victim of Marissa's games to a survivor standing on my own 2 feet. In the days that followed, I focused on my work and Ivy, building a life filled with love and purpose. Alex and I grew closer, bound by our shared passion for theater and our mutual respect for each other's talents. The final performance of the play was a success, and as I watched Ivy on stage, her face alight with happiness, I knew we had found our place. We had turned a page, leaving behind the pain and betrayal, ready to write our own story. Marissa's downfall was not my victory. My victory was in moving forward, in finding joy in the simple things, and in the love I shared with my daughter. As the curtain fell on the final act, I hugged Ivy tightly, her laughter ringing in my ears. We did it, Mommy, she beamed. Yes, we did, I whispered, my heart full. We did it together.
Seriously? An old woman? No way. I'm gonna look for someone younger, so let's call off the engagement. My fiancé Daniel, who was only a year older than me, called me an old woman. That alone was a shock. But to break off our engagement too? Daniel had a certain charisma that drew people to him, always surrounded by someone. He was smug in his ways. This wasn't the first or second time he cheated, and I had forgiven him every time. Clenching my fists, I'd welcome him home, only to cry alone at night in frustration. I had reached my limit. I couldn't forgive Daniel, or maybe I never truly forgave him from my heart. I just wanted to be with him, so I put on a facade, deceiving myself. Now, all the pent-up feelings were rushing back. I fixed my gaze on Daniel. Daniel, I'm done being pushed around by your caprices and selfishness. From now on, I'm living by my own will. And as a first step, Daniel, you're going to get what you deserve. Are you ready? My name is Ava. I just celebrated my 32nd birthday with my fiancé, Daniel. We've been dating for 18 years. We met in middle school, both of us just kids. Since then, I've always bent to Daniel's will, agreeing to his whims, accepting his requests. Before we knew it, we both crossed into our 30s. I started thinking about marrying Daniel, and I thought he felt the same. That's why he gave me an engagement ring, I believed. But now, how much more can I endure? Enduring days of betrayal from Daniel. I met Daniel when I was in 8th grade. He was a new 7th grader who told me he liked me soon after starting school. Will you go out with me? A what? I was bewildered. Being asked out by someone I barely knew, but I was flattered. Daniel was already tall and handsome, and more than anything, I felt proud to be asked out. There was a sense of superiority and excitement about dating a boy before anyone else. So I nodded. Nice to meet you, I'm Daniel. Daniel blushed, looking at me. Then he said something that made me flustered. I'm looking forward to being with you, Ava. Daniel. His mischievous voice and expression, I totally fell for him. But the elation didn't last long. Ava, you're dating Daniel? Oh yeah. I wondered how my classmate Emily knew. Seeing my confusion, another classmate, Chloe, added, Daniel's been bragging about it. Probably the whole school knows by now. Daniel did? I was filled with disbelief. Why did you do that? After school, I confronted Daniel. If the teachers find out, we'll be in big trouble. Sorry, I was just so happy. I wanted everyone to know you're my girlfriend, Ava. Daniel looked down sadly, but replied, I'll be more careful next time. Okay, I'd like that. At that moment, I had already forgiven Daniel. In fact, I found him irresistibly cute. Would I feel this way if I had a younger brother? No, it was a more awkward and sweeter feeling than that, I realized then. That made Daniel's first betrayal even more painful. That's the prettiest girl in school? I heard a disdainful voice. It was so unlike anything Daniel would say to me. I didn't recognize it at first. But once I did, there was no mistaking it. It happened during a school break. I was about to visit Daniel's classroom when I overheard the conversation in the hallway. The standards at the school aren't too high, huh? She's just average. But she's got a good figure, right? Yeah, the chest. Those are definitely big. That part will be fun. Oh, that's a relief. So you are a guy. Well, yeah. A sleazy laugh erupted. There's a group of boys gathered around Daniel. They seemed to be having a great time talking about my looks. I leaned against the wall, unable to move from the spot. My legs were shaking. Ava, are you okay? Yeah, I guess. My classmates came over, concerned. Daniel, still oblivious, continued to joke around with the other boys. That's just awful. But it's important to fit in with the group. I replied, my voice trembling with tears. Ava, maybe he's just embarrassed by the teasing. That's why he said that. My words trailed off. Tears started to flow. Accompanied by my classmates, I went back to my classroom crying. Daniel continued to darken my heart. If he heard about a popular girl at another school, he'd quickly go and flirt with her. Some of these girls seemed serious about dating Daniel. Ava, you have to go! Pressured by Emily and others, I headed to where Daniel was on a date with his new fling. Seeing me, Daniel turned pale. Ava. Who's this? The girl, Grace, was prettier than me. Left alone, Daniel might have switched to her. I suppressed the urge to run and answered. I'm Daniel's girlfriend. Ava! Daniel cried out my name as if in agony. Grace glared at Daniel with a stern look. Wait a minute. You lied to me? Hello. No, it's not like that. Daniel watched his fling leave with a pained expression and voice. Left alone, he turned to me, looking terrified. Ava, listen. What's your intention? My voice was cold. In response, Daniel opened and closed his mouth frantically, like a fish out of water. Finally, he seemed to find an excuse. She was persistent, you know. When I confronted him, Daniel always replied like this. I just went on one date with her, Ava. You're the one for me. Right. I nodded. It wasn't that I was convinced. I just knew that no matter what I said, Daniel wouldn't apologize. And more than anything, I didn't want to keep nagging about his cheating and end up being disliked by him. My relationship with Daniel, which started with a sense of superiority, had become dominated by him. Even regarding our future paths, Daniel pushed me to choose a high school that suited his academic level and convenience. We should go to the same high school, right? Yeah, but my teacher said I could go to a better private school. Are you going to abandon me? With tears in his eyes, Daniel looked at me. By then, I could see through his fake crying, but still, I couldn't defy Daniel. Okay, I'll go to the same high school as you. Yeah, wait for me there, Ava. When his opinion prevailed, Daniel showed a sweet smile. It was a reward for me, and I kept pushing myself too hard just to see that smile. When I told my parents about my high school choice, my mom, Isabella, was clearly disappointed in me. Why would you go to such a mediocre high school? That's right, you need to graduate from a good college and get a promising job, my dad Oliver also said, but I clumsily lied, saying that all my friends were going to that high school. In reality, my friends had chosen better high schools. I also understood that aligning with academically weaker Daniel had no benefit, plus lying to my parents was a first for me. I felt torn between guilt towards my parents and keeping my promise to Daniel. I'm disappointed in you, they said, and that was the end of our conversation. From the next day, my parents started to visibly distance themselves from me. In contrast, Daniel was in a great mood. Thanks, Ava. Now we'll be together in high school, too. Yeah. I was unsure if I was doing the right thing or making a mistake. All I knew was that Daniel was smiling. That was all. After starting high school, my relationship with my parents only worsened. This month, I overspent on this social game. Is it that interesting? Yeah, it's really fun. You should try it, Ava. Maybe I should. The social game that started in such a casual manner turned out to be the beginning of new troubles. I usually didn't care much about it. I never really liked that game after all. The problem was the friend feature. There were events where players cooperated, and Daniel invited me to the game as his ally. Ava, your character's weak. Spin the wheel more to strengthen our allies. Sorry. Following Daniel's instructions, I indeed made our character stronger. But the in-game spending also increased, and my mom noticed. Not only did you go to a bad high school, but now you're spending on games? What are you doing? But my friends... If those are your friends, you're better off alone. Don't say that. For the first time, I talked back to my mom. I wouldn't let her say that a world without Daniel would be better. Talking back to your parents. My mom looked both angry and sad. Since then, I hardly spoke to my parents. When I discussed this with Daniel, he showed his usual smile. That's fine, it's your life after all. Is it though? I wondered why Daniel of all people would say that. Was I really living my own life? Or was I just being manipulated into a life convenient for him? By the time I realized this, it was too late. Right after high school graduation, I chose to work. My parents had completely given up on me. I couldn't even think about going to college, especially since Daniel's attitude suggested he wouldn't allow it. You wouldn't betray me, would you, Ava? No. As always, I just agreed. Daniel had dropped out of high school. There's no point in going to school once you've graduated. He said so, but the real reason was a conflict with a teacher. With a dropout as his highest education, Daniel couldn't find a company to hire him. He could only get part-time jobs, and he often caused trouble there too. That boss is so arrogant, it's annoying. Did you quit your job again? I asked, feeling somewhat fed up. By then, Daniel and I had started living together. Once my parents found out I was dating Daniel, they finally kicked me out. Daniel, too, had a weak relationship with his family and moved into my apartment with nothing but himself. It's the start of a fun life together, he said. Sure is. Daniel seemed genuinely happy, but I just forced a smile. I couldn't help but think it was just going to be more trouble. People around me kept saying I should break up with Daniel. He's just a parasite at this point. Well, he does work at least, he wants to. But I saw him skipping work to go to the casino just the other day. Who told you that? My response was cool. My friends gradually distanced themselves from me. Deep down, I knew they were right. Daniel isn't someone who cares about my happiness, but I believed I couldn't be happy without him. I truly thought so. And then it happened soon after. Turns out an old woman's too much. I'm going to look for someone younger, so let's call off the engagement, haha. Daniel said this as he pulled the engagement ring off my finger. Daniel? I was out of my mind. His smile wasn't sweet anymore. It was a condescending, unpleasant laugh. Ava, you're 32, right? Not exactly young. I'm only a year older than you. My rebuttal felt hollow. Daniel never cared about his own age. He simply wanted to switch to younger, cuter girls. And Daniel had already been cheating with several of them. Daniel was good-looking and knew how to charm. Seducing girls was easy for him. The reason these affairs didn't last was probably because his selfish nature became apparent, or because he was financially unreliable. I'm a witness to that. Above all, I'm the representative of his victims. Haven't been deceived by Daniel. All right then, bye Ava. Daniel waved his hand. In it, he held the engagement ring he had pulled off my finger. I wondered who he intended to give that ring to next. That's what I thought, and that's when I decided. Daniel, I won't let you have your way anymore. Goodbye, Daniel. Oh, you're pretty understanding. That's what I always liked about you, Ava. Is that so? It seemed my time being liked by Daniel was already in the past. Perhaps he never really liked me at all. Now that you understand, get out. What? Oh, did you forget? I'm the one renting this apartment. Oh, right. He smirked as if realizing I was kicking him out. He still didn't get it, I thought. Before I knew it, I was smiling too. Your clothes, too? What? The clothes you're wearing. I bought them all. Oh, keep your underwear. Give me everything else. I'll sell them to a thrift store. You want me to leave in just my underwear? Daniel exclaimed. I should have at least one outfit I bought myself. Nope, I have the proof. Proof? All the clothing store receipts. I kept them all. And for groceries, utilities, everything. What's that about? His voice became increasingly pitiful. I mean, keeping a toothbrush is pointless, right? And there are 2 sets of dishes, so one set is... I'll throw them out. Then at least give them to me. You can only take what you bought yourself, Daniel. Daniel looked out the window with a look of despair. Is it snowing outside? Yes. I nodded calmly. Daniel pleaded with a trembling voice. At least let me keep my jacket. Fine, you can wear the undershirt, but not the jacket. It's a designer brand and worth a good price. I smiled emptily. The jacket I bought for Daniel. He insisted on having it, and I gave in. It was just a year ago. The black long coat suited him so well. At that time, I felt proud. You're a devil. I'm fine with being a devil. After all, I'm just an old woman. I waved my hand at the door and closed it, thinking I should change the lock soon. I had taken back the spare key from Daniel, but he might have another one. You'll regret treating me like this. I'll never see you again. I heard Daniel's parting words. I crouched down, holding my head. I felt anxious. I had broken up with him in a rush, but could I really come to dislike Daniel? He had been with me all this time, and now he won't be there in my future days. I've lost a smile forever. Realizing this, I raised my head. Leaning against the door, I burst out laughing. Daniel's gone. He's really gone. I felt truly free at last. There was a sense of relief and fulfillment. Daniel had long since ceased to be a love interest for me. It was just inertia keeping us together. Being with Daniel meant always worrying about upsetting him and couldn't be myself. It became clear to me. I don't need you anymore, Daniel. This was just right. He left on his own. As I thought this, a tear rolled down my cheek. I finally realized I had written him off a long time ago. For me, he was nothing but a detriment, and I was surprised at my own weakness for looking away from that fact. And there was still a slight feeling of loneliness, but that feeling would end today. Be prepared for tomorrow, Daniel. Looking at the empty room, I murmured, "Let's do this." I was ready to move on. Busy days lay ahead. The first thing to do was change the locks. When I spoke to my landlady Harper about it, she said it was probably for the best. "Your boyfriend wasn't well liked in the apartment complex." Is that so? I was able to take her words more calmly than expected. The old me would have been angry. Any criticism of Daniel used to be unbearable for me, but now it was different. Like a cloudy sky clearing up rapidly, my thoughts became clear. "Please take care of the lock change." "Okay, got it." Harper responded affirmatively with a strong nod. On my way back to my apartment, I was stopped by another tenant, Zoe. What is it?" "You were Daniel's fiancé, right?" "Ex-fiancé now." "Oh, so you did break up?" Zoe frowned, seemingly troubled. Looking around, she then said, "Could you come to my apartment?" "Why?" "I'm being followed by him. He's spreading rumors that we're dating, and the stalking is getting worse every day. I'm scared," Zoe said, looking intently at me, clasping her hands together as if in prayer. "He said he would marry me after breaking up with you." "What?" "But you seem like a normal person. You don't look at all like the horrible woman he described." He was bad-mouthing me. I felt a grimace forming on my face. Guided by Zoe, I visited her apartment. What I heard was Daniel's appalling other side. "I knew he sometimes took money from my wallet, but to buy you gifts with it?" "Yes, he always seemed to have a lot of money despite barely working. Turns out, he was stealing money from his fiancé's wallet." While sipping coffee Zoe offered, she said, "I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry." "It's okay. We're both suffering because of the same man," I said with a bitter smile. "But now we need to think about what comes next." "What comes next?" Zoe asked, puzzled. "Yes, how we're going to get back at Daniel." I shared my thoughts with her. Zoe listened intently, nodding and agreeing repeatedly. Then I had something additional to add. "Actually, I knew about you before." "What?" Zoe looked surprised, which was understandable. We lived in the same apartment complex, but that was it. Our lives were so different, we hardly saw each other, and if we did, it was just a passing greeting. I took a stack of documents from my purse. "Please don't be upset, but I had a detective investigate all of Daniel's affairs." "What?" Zoe looked at me. Her eyes were slightly fearful. I smiled to ease her tension and said, "The report said you were just being pursued one-sidedly by Daniel." "Please believe me, I have nothing to do with him." "I believe you. Calm down." "Thank God." Zoe let out a relieved sigh. Of the other women, only 3 out of 5 were in a clear romantic relationship with him. You and another woman were just being pursued by him. "So there are others who have suffered like me?" Zoe hung her head. Clearly she was distressed. Knowing there were other women in the same situation, she must have felt empathy and sympathy. I leaned in slightly and said, "Shall we meet them?" "Huh?" "We'll work together to teach Daniel a lesson." "Get back at him, but how?" "Through a lawsuit," I said more assertively. "First, we'll talk to the police to get him recognized as a stalker. He's not smart enough to give up. There'll be a chance to sue." "Use me as bait to lure him?" "Well, not exactly." I was flustered. Indeed, that's how it seemed. I had been about to impose danger on Zoe. Just as I was about to hastily retract my proposal, Zoe nodded in response. "I'll do it." "Do what?" "I'll be the decoy, if it means we can beat him." "Really?" I thought I saw a flame in Zoe's eyes. "Then from now on, we're allies." "Yes. Oh, by the way, my name's Zoe." She introduced herself, albeit belatedly. So, with this introduction, Zoe and I began to open up to each other. Unaware of what was going on, Daniel, as expected, persistently proposed marriage to Zoe. I waited for the right moment and went to meet Daniel with Zoe. Upon seeing me, Daniel screamed, "What the hell, Zoe? Why are you with Ava?" "We are allies," Zoe replied, avoiding his gaze. "It's not just the two of us." "What? Why are all of you here?" Daniel recoiled in shock. There were 4 other young and beautiful women. They were the women Daniel had been wooing. One of them, like Zoe, had been a victim of his stalking. The anger in her eyes as she looked at Daniel was palpable. The other 3 women acknowledged they had been dating Daniel. However, they each claimed that they were in a relationship with him under the promise of marriage. In essence, all of them had been deceived by Daniel. I didn't know you were engaged, Daniel. It's a misunderstanding. I broke up with her already. What about the other girls? They all thought they were going to marry you, including me. Yikes. Among the 6 women, including myself. There was one particularly assertive woman. When she learned that Daniel had been deceiving her just for fun, she became incredibly angry. Now she was confronting Daniel. As the woman yelled at him, Daniel looked at me, his eyes brimming with tears. Ava, it was you, wasn't it? You told him. Uh-huh, sure. I tilted my head and replied. But Daniel, you're the one who deceived everyone. Even so, calling everyone here at once? Help! Forgive me. Daniel was surrounded by the other women, all complaining to him at once. They all had really loved him. I understand, because I felt the same way. With a mix of pride and oddness, I watched Daniel and the women. A year has passed since then. I continue to interact with Zoe. Lately, we've been visiting each other's apartments more often. And then, as I was talking, my phone rang. I ignored it and continued my story. Zoe looked puzzled. Ava, aren't you going to answer that? Oh, it's fine. It's not important. Really? Zoe seemed curious. I smiled wryly. Without checking, I knew who was calling. It was Daniel. Daniel keeps complaining every time he gets a new girlfriend, I said. Why? Because Emma exposes his past to each new girlfriend. He wants me to stop her. Oh. Zoe sighed as if she knew Emma would do that. Emma was the first woman to confront Daniel that day. I don't think there's much I can do. Emma isn't the type to listen, I said. Probably not. We shared a bitter smile. The calls came at any time, during meals, at work, or even while talking with friends. Enough already. At one point, I couldn't stand it anymore and answered Daniel's call. Daniel sounded desperate. Just stop it, please. Get Emma to stop. You brought it upon yourself, I replied, thinking about tonight. Tonight, we're having hot pot at Zoe's house. My friends and Zoe's friends were coming together to enjoy a pot on a winter night. I was looking forward to that, so I wasn't really listening to Daniel's words seriously. I was just saying what I thought. You made 6 women, including me, unhappy. You have to bear that. I'm not with anyone now. Zoe treats me like a stalker, and every time I get a new girlfriend, she leaves because of Emma. I can't help you with that. Emma's grudge was deep. Stopping her seemed pointless. Is that all? Is that all? What a cold response. Don't you feel a bit sorry for me? No, I'm a devilish old woman, remember? I said and ended the call. Then I muttered quietly. I'm still bothered by being called an old woman. Surprised by this realization, I shook my head, trying to shift my mood. That's when I saw him. Ah, Ava, it's been a while. A man was running towards me with a smile. At first, I didn't recognize him, but his smile brought back memories that helped me remember. Jackson? I came nearby because my mom said so. I never thought I'd see you. The cheerful man was Jackson, my childhood friend. After that, Daniel still kept contacting me. His persistence surprised and annoyed me, but I continued to ignore him. I changed my phone number once, but he even showed up at my apartment. Getting rid of Daniel was a hassle, so I just kept the same number and continued to ignore him. Should I talk to him sternly? No, I've decided not to involve myself with him anymore. Okay then, Jackson nodded, looking slightly disappointed. He'd returned from Boston for an arranged marriage his mother had set up. What about you, Ava? Any matchmaking? No, I am estranged from my parents. Oh, that's too bad. Jackson frowned. Your ex-boyfriend ruined your life. I was naive. I dreamt about him and depended on him. Now I understand. My life revolved around Daniel. I was always concerned about his mood, happy or sad at his words. I'm fine now. I can walk alone. If that's the case, then that's good. Jackson looked unconvinced. To persuade him, I took out something. What's that? My college diploma. I secretly attended an online university while with Daniel. I felt I owed it to my parents, who had high hopes for me, but I couldn't betray Daniel, so I chose to study between work. That's surprising, Jackson laughed out loud. But it's a good thing. Now you can aim for a career upgrade. Yeah, maybe. After a while of laughter, my phone rang again. Jackson scratched his head and said, Hey, Ava. What? Why don't you date me? What are you talking about? I was flabbergasted. The phone was still ringing. You're not serious, are you? I am. Jackson's voice was earnest. His face lost its smile and showed tension. I've always had feelings for you. You're joking. I'm serious. Jackson's face turned red as he insisted. I couldn't help but smile genuinely. I gave in to Jackson's persistence and started dating him. We were the same age and got along well. With Daniel, I had always conferred to him, so the easygoing relationship with Jackson felt odd. The phone call still continued. Every time the phone rang, Jackson looked either annoyed or sad. I took his hand and smiled. It's okay, you're here with me. Ava. Jackson looked worried for a moment, but then he nodded firmly. I'll protect you, Ava. I'm an old woman, you know. If you're an old woman, then I'm an old man. We're the same age. Right. Maybe it didn't mean much to Jackson, but his words finally freed me from the spell of being called an old woman.
My name's Erica. If you asked me how I started, I'd say with nothing fancy, just a girl from a regular family, with parents who loved me more than anything. My life was pretty standard until I hit college, where I met Jack. He was in the same restaurateur program, and man, did we click. We were both dreamers, aiming to carve out a little empire of our own. Ever think about opening your own place, Erica? Jack asked one night as we were cramming for finals over cheap coffee and day-old donuts. All the time, I admitted, not taking my eyes off the business plan spread across the table. Imagine a cozy little spot, authentic Italian, the kind of place where everyone feels like family. Jack grinned, his eyes lighting up. We could do it, you know. Run it together. What's stopping us? Money, I sighed, a laugh escaping despite the truth of it. Loads and loads of money. But life has a funny way of turning dreams into reality. When my parents passed away suddenly, a brutal car crash that took them too soon, they left me their house and a tidy sum of $400,000. After the grief, the silence of the house was overwhelming. It was Jack who stepped up. Let's do it, Erica. Let's make your dream come true. For you, for them, he said one evening as we sat in the quiet living room, surrounded by memories. Are you sure? I asked, feeling the weight of the decision. It's a huge risk. Jack took my hands in his. I'm in if you're in, all the way. With that, we got married right after graduation and poured every dime and ounce of energy into our first restaurant. I designed the interiors myself, choosing warm yellows and reds, and we both developed the menu, testing recipes until midnight most days. The first few years were tough, no lie. There were nights I fell into bed with my shoes still on, too tired to move. But seeing our dream take shape, watching the 3 restaurants flourish under our care, made every aching muscle worth it. Mom, why are you always at the restaurant? My son, Danny, asked one day. He was about 7, his face serious as only a kid's can be. Because it's our family's place, sweetheart. We built it so we could have a good life, you know? I explained as I tied my apron, preparing for another long shift. But you're always working, he pouted, and it stung because he was right. I know, kiddo. But I promise, we're doing this for us, for our future. One day, you'll see it was worth it, I said, kissing his forehead before rushing out the door, the bell jingling behind me. After years of what seemed like marital bliss and bustling restaurant nights, I started noticing the cracks. Jack and I weren't the dream team we used to be. He was pulling away, distant, like he was always somewhere else even when he was right there. It was a regular Tuesday evening, and I was doing the books in the office when Jack walked in, late again, his jacket slung carelessly over one shoulder. "Jack, we need to talk about the Henderson event. They want to book the big room, and I can't make that call without you," I said, trying to catch his eye as he rifled through some mail. "Yeah, sure, whatever you think is best," he muttered, not looking up. That was his new thing, agreeing without listening. It drove me nuts. "Jack," I snapped, louder this time. "This is important. Can you please focus?" He finally looked at me, his eyes tired, or maybe just uninterested. "Erica, I trust your judgment. Just handle it, okay? I've got a lot on my mind." That was another thing. What exactly was on his mind these days? I used to know every thought he had. Now? Not so much. One night, I just couldn't take the guessing games anymore. We were in bed, the only time we ever were in the same room it seemed, and I turned to him, my voice shaky but needing the truth. "Jack, is there someone else?" The words felt like broken glass coming out of my mouth. He was silent for a long moment, the kind of silence that tells you everything you don't want to hear. "Yeah, there is," he said finally, his voice flat. No anger, no sorrow, just cold, hard fact. "It just happened. We've changed. I've changed. You've changed. It's not just one thing." The next day was a blur. I moved through the motions at the restaurant, smiling at customers, checking on orders, all while feeling like I was outside my body, looking down at some stranger living my life. When I finally got home, Jack was there, sitting at the kitchen table with that look on his face, the one that used to mean he had something serious to say. "Erica, I think we should talk about what this means for us," he said, as I dropped my keys on the counter, not ready to sit, not ready to hear it. "What's there to talk about, Jack? You've made your choice," I said, my voice cold, steadier than I felt. "We should get a divorce. There's nothing left to salvage." He didn't argue with that. Maybe he wanted to, or maybe he was just as tired as I was. Tired of pretending, tired of hiding, tired of whatever we had become. The following weeks were a whirlwind of meetings with lawyers and dividing up the life we had built together. I kept the house and half of everything else. It was fair, I suppose, but it felt like paying a huge price for a life I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. That's the thing about building something with someone, it becomes so intertwined that tearing it apart leaves everything looking a bit frayed, a bit worn, a shadow of what it used to be. Starting over is like standing on a cliff edge, the fear of the drop, but also the thrill of the unknown. After Jack, I spent a lot of time figuring things out, getting the restaurants running smooth without him, and just being alone. It wasn't bad, not really. Gave me time to think, to breathe. But then, like a cliché in some corny romance novel, Tom walked into my life, a lawyer with a killer smile that probably won too many cases on charm alone. He came into the restaurant one busy Friday night, his little girl, Emily, in tow. They were hard to miss, she had the same bright laugh as her dad. "A glass of your house red for me, and a lemonade for the little miss," Tom smiled at me, not knowing I owned the place. I was filling in for the hostess that night, just trying to keep busy. Throughout the night, I kept catching glimpses of them from the corner of my eye, him explaining bits of the menu to her, her listening so intently like the world depended on it. It was adorable. Made me miss having that kind of simple interaction, which had become so rare in my life. As they were leaving, Tom stopped by the register where I was cashing out another customer. "Thanks for a wonderful dinner," he said. "The food was excellent, and so was the service." "Glad you enjoyed it," I replied, handing the receipt to the customer before turning to give Tom my full attention. "And your company seemed pretty top-notch too." That was the beginning of everything. Tom started coming around more often, sometimes with Emily, sometimes alone. We'd chat, casual at first, then deeper conversations as the weeks turned into months. He was different, thoughtful, and real. One evening, he closed his menu and leaned back in his chair, watching me as I wiped down the counter. "Erica, would you like to go out sometime? I mean, outside of this place?" I paused, cloth in hand, not sure if I was ready. "Like a date?" "Yeah, a date," he smiled, looking a bit nervous himself. As things started getting serious with Tom, I knew it was time for him to meet my boys, Danny and Sam. I won't lie, I was nervous about how they'd take to him. They'd had a rough time after their dad and I split up, and bringing someone new into our lives felt huge. One Saturday, I decided to throw a small barbecue at our place. Casual, no pressure. Tom came over with Emily, and right off, I could see the boys were sizing him up, a bit standoffish at first, which was expected. Tom, bless his heart, didn't push it. He tossed a football to Danny. "Hey champ, think you can teach me a few tricks?" Danny, a natural athlete, lit up at the chance to show off his skills. "Sure, but only if you can keep up," he shot back with a grin. Sam, quieter and more into his books, hung back a bit. Tom noticed and wandered over to him later with a comic book in hand. "Heard you're the expert on these. Think you could explain the multiverse theory to me? It's way over my head." Sam's eyes, usually glued to his tablet, looked up, surprised and a bit impressed. Sure, I can do that." Watching them talk, seeing Tom genuinely interested in what Sam had to say, it eased my heart. And Emily, she was a gem, trying to include Sam in the conversation, showing off her own collection of superhero stickers. Just when I thought I had left all the drama behind and could finally get some peace with Tom and the kids, my past came knocking, or rather, ringing, on my day off. I was in the middle of making lunch when my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in a while. It was Jack. My heart sank a bit, not ready to hear whatever he had to say. "Erica, you're not going to believe this, but I'm suing you," Jack's voice chirped through the speaker, too cheerful for the words he was spitting out. "You got more than your fair share in the divorce, and I've been talking to some very good lawyers. My new father-in-law's picking up the tab. We're going to make sure I get what I deserve, which is a lot more than what I walked away with." My head was spinning. "You've got to be kidding me. We split everything fair and square. You agreed to it." "Yeah, well, I've changed my mind. You don't deserve the good life, Erica. Not after how boring and ugly you turned out. I'm going to make sure you pay for it," he sneered, and I could almost see the smug look on his face. I couldn't hold back the tears. They started to fall, hot and fast, as the shock turned to anger, then hurt. Tom walked in right then, his face clouding over when he saw me. "Babe, what's wrong? Who was that on the phone?" "It was Jack. He's suing me. Says he didn't get enough from the divorce and now wants to ruin me," I managed to get out between sobs. A couple of weeks later, the nightmare continued when I bumped into Jack and his new wife, Laura, at the school parking lot. I was there to pick up the boys, and there they were, leaning against their car, looking like they owned the place. Laura spotted me first and smirked. "Look who it is. If it isn't the sad little ex-wife. Not taking very good care of yourself, are you, Erica? Don't worry, Tom will be out the door soon enough, just like Jack was." I felt my face flush with anger. "Watch your mouth, Laura. You know nothing about my life." Jack chuckled, joining in. "Oh, but we do, Erica. We know enough to see you're failing miserably." Maybe it's time someone else took over raising your kids. You're clearly not up to the task. That's enough, Jack, I shouted, my voice louder than I intended. The few parents milling about turned to look. You should be ashamed, talking like this in front of your own children. They walked away, leaving me there, fuming and humiliated. The drive back was quiet, my mind racing a mile a minute. How had my life come to this? Being threatened by my ex, insulted in front of my kids. But as we drove, my resolve hardened. Jack wanted a fight? He'd get one. Tom was already home when we arrived, and he could see the fire in my eyes as I walked through the door. Babe, you okay? You look like you're ready to go to war, he said, a worried look crossing his face as he came over to help with the boys. I am. I want to hire a private investigator, I said without preamble, dropping my keys on the counter with a clatter. Jack's up to something, and I want to know what it is. The next day, Tom set up a meeting with the investigator, a grizzled guy named Mike, who had seen more shady dealings than a street corner in a noir film. We laid out everything, and Mike nodded, scribbling notes in a worn leather notebook. It didn't take long for Mike to get back to us. The news he brought wasn't just good, it was golden. Jack hadn't changed one bit, still the same cheater he always was, but this time he was playing around with a stripper. I was sitting at the kitchen table when I forwarded the evidence to Lara, adding just a note. Thought you should know what your perfect husband is up to. The response was quicker than I expected. Lara called me, her voice choked with tears and something else, shame, maybe? Erica, I'm so sorry, she stammered out between sobs. I had no idea. I was so horrible to you, and now, Jack. Lara, stop. It's not your fault he's a jerk, I found myself saying, the anger softening as I listened to her cry. Look, I understand more than anyone what it's like to be lied to by that man. There was a heavy pause, and then Lara sniffled loudly. Can I help? I mean, I want to make this right. Not just for me, but for you too, Erica. I was taken aback. This was the last thing I expected. Let's meet. We can talk about it. Thank you, Erica. Really, thank you, she said, her voice cracking again. As I hung up the phone, a mix of emotions swirled through me. I had started this to protect myself and hit back at Jack, but now it felt like something more. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about setting things right. Somehow, against all odds, Lara and I were on the same side now. This battle had just taken a very unexpected turn. Sitting in the little cafe with the red awning, waiting for Lara, felt surreal. Just weeks ago, she was an enemy, laughing at me alongside Jack. Now, she could be an unexpected ally. The bell above the door jingled, snapping me out of my thoughts as Lara walked in, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. Her walk was determined as she slid into the booth across from me, clutching a bulky folder. Erica, thank you for meeting me, she started, her voice shaky but sincere. I nodded, straight to the point. What do you have for me, Lara? Without a word, she pushed the folder across the table. Everything you need to know about Jack's recent activities. I opened the folder, scanning the documents rapidly. My heart sank with each page. There were emails and texts between Jack and several of my top employees, offering them double their current pay to jump ship and join a new venture he was planning. This is just the beginning, Lara said. He's been spreading rumors about your restaurants. Claims of unsanitary conditions, poor service, even paid people to write bad reviews online. The world seemed to spin a little. And the lawsuits? He's gearing up to claim you've hidden profits, that you cheated him out of his rightful share during the divorce, she added, her eyes darkening. I leaned back, absorbing the blow. This was worse than I thought. Jack was playing dirty, trying to take everything I'd worked so hard to build. Does he know you're doing this? I asked, eyeing her carefully. Lara shook her head vigorously. No, and he can't know. Not yet. I can't believe I was so blind. Just beat him, Erica. Show him he can't push us around. I took the documents home and showed them to Tom, who read through them with a furrowed brow. We've got him, Tom said confidently after a long silence. With this evidence, we can not only defend against his claims, but go on the offensive. He won't know what hit him. Buoyed by Tom's confidence, I knew what I had to do next. The following day, I called a meeting with all my staff at the main restaurant. The air was tense as everyone gathered, whispering about the urgent summon. Thank you for coming on such short notice, I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I'm sure you've heard rumors lately, bad reviews, talks of unsanitary conditions. It's all a targeted attack on us, by my ex-husband Jack. The room was silent for a moment before Marco, now my head chef, stood up. We're with you, Erica. We know the truth. We see how hard you work, how much you care. Jack's got nothing on you. Nods and murmurs of agreement followed, the team's solidarity palpable. Thank you, I said, feeling a surge of relief and determination. And I want to take this a step further. Starting today, we're installing live cameras in the kitchens. Let our customers see the truth for themselves. The announcement was met with applause, the team rallied by the proactive approach. I didn't stop there. I took to social media, posting a video explaining the situation. Come see for yourself, I invited our customers. Take a tour, watch our chefs at work. We have nothing to hide. The response was overwhelming. Bookings for kitchen tours came flooding in, and the community support was incredible. Our reservations spiked, people eager to stand with us against the underhanded tactics, trying to undermine our integrity. A week later, Jack called me and offered to discuss our differences. The meeting was set in one of those upscale places that Jack always liked, the kind where they charge you $10 just to breathe their air. As soon as we were all seated, Jack wasted no time. Erica, I'm willing to be generous here, he started, his voice oozing false charm. I'm ready to forgive you for all the trouble you've caused, and all I'm asking in return is a couple of your restaurants and, let's say, a small compensation of $1 million. I stared at him, stunned by his audacity. Then, the absurdity of his demand hit me, and I couldn't help but burst out laughing. You're joking, right? Please tell me this is a joke. I'm dead serious, Erica. It's more than fair, considering the circumstances, Jack sneered, looking at Lara. Tell them, honey. Tell them your dad's backing us up. Lara's expression was unreadable at first, then she turned to Jack, her voice calm but cold enough to chill the wine. Actually, Jack, there's been a change of plans. Jack blinked, confused. What are you talking about? Lara stood up, her chair scraping back sharply. She reached into her purse, pulling out a stack of papers. I'm talking about this, Jack. She threw the papers on the table, they scattered slightly, the word divorce visible on the top sheet. Jack's face went white as he picked up the papers, his hands trembling. Lara, what, why? Because I know about your affairs, all of them. Your sweet stripper was the final straw. Lara's voice broke slightly, but she quickly composed herself. And my father, he's indeed getting his lawyers involved, but not to help you. They'll be representing me in the divorce and suing you for everything you've done. She turned to me, her eyes softer. Erica, I should have believed you from the start. I'm so sorry for everything. I reached out, squeezing her hand briefly. It's okay, Lara. We both fell for his lies. But it's over now. Lara nodded, pulling her hand back and taking a deep breath. It is. She looked back at Jack, who was now slumped in his chair, his face buried in his hands. Goodbye, Jack. With that, Lara walked out of the restaurant, her head held high. The silence that followed was heavy. Jack finally looked up, his eyes red. Erica, please, I can change. Don't let her do this. Don't let her ruin me. Tom's laugh was harsh, echoing slightly in the suddenly too quiet restaurant. You did that all on your own, Jack. Erica has nothing to do with it. And as for that lawsuit you were so eager about, expect one from us for defamation. And trust me, we have more than enough to bury you. We stood up, ready to leave this mess behind. Jack remained seated, a broken figure who'd finally run out of moves. The courtroom was hushed as Tom and I waited for the judge to deliver the final verdict. My hands were clammy, clasped tightly together in my lap, while Tom, ever the rock, gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. The judge looked over the rim of his glasses, his voice steady and clear. In the matter of the defamation and damage to reputation brought by Ms. Erica against Mr. Jack, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Erica. It is ordered that Mr. Jack pay a sum of $500,000 in damages. A gasp went through the courtroom, mostly from Jack's side, but the sound was music to my ears. Tom leaned over, his whisper just for me. We did it, babe. You stood your ground, and you won. I could hardly believe it. After everything Jack had put me through, justice was finally served. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, not of sorrow, but of relief, of closure. But our legal victories didn't end there. Lara, true to her word, had gone after Jack with everything she had. Her father's lawyers were relentless, and Jack was ordered to pay a massive settlement for his infidelity and the emotional distress he caused. In the aftermath, Jack's restaurant empire began to falter. Saddled with debt and a tarnished reputation, he couldn't keep up. When his main restaurant came up for sale, Tom nudged me gently. You should buy it, turn it into something good. And I did. I purchased his restaurant at a fraction of its worth. One afternoon, as I surveyed my new property, Lara walked in. Since the trial, we'd found solace in our shared struggles and had become unlikely friends. Looks different when it's empty, doesn't it? She remarked, her voice echoing slightly in the vacant space. It does, but it won't be for long. I'm thinking of turning this place into a family-friendly venue, something the community can really enjoy. I shared, excited about the possibilities. We walked through the empty restaurant, planning and dreaming about what it could become. Lara, now free from Jack's shadow, was thinking about starting her own business, perhaps something in interior design. You've got an eye for it, I encouraged her. You helped me see the potential in this old place. As we stood there, talking about the future, I felt a profound sense of peace. The battles were over, the past finally put to rest. I had my family, my friends, and a future that looked brighter than it had in years. You know, I never thought we'd end up here, Lara said, gesturing around us. Me neither, I laughed. But I'm glad we did. It's funny how life works out, isn't it? As we left the building, the sun was setting, casting long shadows and bathing the street in golden light. I took a deep breath, feeling truly free for the first time in years. The road hadn't been easy, but it led me here, to this moment, this feeling of complete and utter freedom. I remember that day like it was just yesterday. It was one of those rare days off where I decided to take matters into my own hands and clean the house. My parents' old place was more than just a house to me, it was a sanctuary filled with memories. After they passed, I kept everything the same, living a life they would have been proud of, simple, modest, and grounded, despite the wealth they left behind. So, there I was, knee-deep in dust and nostalgia, wearing the most unflattering outfit you could imagine, an old tee and faded jeans, hair tied up in a makeshift bun, with gloves that had seen better days. The sun was setting, and my stomach was rumbling, reminding me I had skipped lunch in my cleaning frenzy. Deciding to treat myself, I picked up my phone and dialed the local pizzeria. "Yeah, hi. I'd like to order a large pepperoni with extra cheese, please. How soon can you get it here?" I asked, hoping it wouldn't take too long. The voice on the other end assured me it'd be no more than 30 minutes. True to their word, the doorbell rang, and I rushed to answer it, eager for my cheesy reward. Standing on the doorstep was a young man, probably in his mid-20s, with a warm smile and a pizza box in hand. "Evening, ma'am. Pizza delivery," he said, his eyes scanning the grandeur of the foyer behind me. "Thanks. Just put it here." I gestured to the console table near the door, fishing for my wallet. As I handed him the cash, our eyes met, and an awkward yet friendly silence fell between us. He broke the ice first. "You work here long? This place is massive," he asked, curiosity lighting up his eyes. I couldn't help but smile at the assumption. "Something like that." I played along, not ready to reveal the whole truth. "Owners are quite the characters, you know?" "Yeah? They must be loaded to live in a place like this." "Must be nice, huh?" He chuckled, shifting the pizza box under his arm. "Suppose so," I replied, leaning against the doorframe. "They're not home much. Always traveling or caught up in work." He nodded, understandingly. "Sounds lonely. You get to hang around in all this luxury, though. Not a bad deal, eh?" I laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh. "Guess you could say that. Beats the hustle outside." We chatted for a few more minutes, him asking about the owners, and me spinning tales that were half true. There was something about this guy, a sincerity mixed with curiosity, that made me want to keep talking. "Hey, if you're not busy, maybe you'd like to grab a coffee sometime? You know, when you're not working," he ventured, a hopeful look in his eyes. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew this little game of pretend couldn't last forever. "Sure, why not? Could use a friend around here," I found myself saying, surprising even me. "Great. I'm Alex, by the way." He extended his hand, which I shook, feeling the warmth of his grasp. "Emma," I introduced myself, deciding to stick to at least one truth tonight. After that first unexpected meeting with Alex, things started to pick up speed faster than I could have imagined. Our first coffee date turned into a series of meetups, each one more interesting than the last. It wasn't long before I found myself looking forward to our time together, enjoying the simplicity and authenticity of our conversations. It was a refreshing change from the usual circles I found myself in. One evening, as we were walking through the park after grabbing a bite from a food truck, Alex turned to me, his expression curious. "Emma, you ever think about what it's like, living a life without all this?" He gestured around, implying the modest surroundings compared to the grandeur of my home. I shrugged, keeping my response light. "Sometimes, I guess. But it's not the place that makes the life, you know? It's the people, the experiences." He nodded, looking thoughtful. "Yeah, I get that. Just seems like a different world from mine, is all." As days turned into weeks, our casual outings started to feel like something more. Alex was different. He didn't put on airs or try to impress with grand gestures. He was just himself, and that made me feel comfortable being me, or at least, the version of me I had presented to him. One night, we found ourselves at a local dive bar, the kind of place I'd never stepped foot in before meeting him. The atmosphere was lively, filled with the buzz of conversation and laughter. We squeezed into a booth, the dim lighting casting shadows over our table. "So, Emma," Alex started, a playful edge to his voice, "ever think about ditching the fancy life and running away to a cabin in the woods? Just you, me, and nature?" I laughed, the idea so far from my reality, but oddly appealing. Run away to a cabin, huh? And leave all my responsibilities behind? Tempting, but I think I'd miss the chaos of my life. He leaned in, his gaze intense. "I'm serious. You ever just want to get away from it all? No expectations, no pressures?" I met his gaze, feeling a surge of honesty. "Yeah, I do. More often than you'd think. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if things were different, simpler." Alex reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "Emma, whatever life you've got waiting for you out there, I want you to know I'm here for you. Doesn't matter if it's a mansion or a cabin in the woods. I like you for you." It had been a few months since Alex and I started seeing each other. Our relationship, built on a foundation of supposed simplicity and modest living, was about to face its first real test. I had danced around the truth of my identity for too long, and the weight of the lie was becoming unbearable. It was time to come clean, to reveal the world I actually came from. But how do you tell someone you've been lying to them about who you are since the day you met? I decided to invite Alex over for dinner at my place, well, the mansion that he thought belonged to my employers. It was the setting of our first encounter and, in my mind, the fitting place for my confession. As I prepared dinner, my thoughts raced. How would Alex react? Would he see me as a liar, or would he understand why I did it? The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my reverie. It was showtime. "Hey, Alex. Come on in," I greeted him, trying to sound as normal as possible. "Wow, your bosses must really trust you to have you host dinner in their mansion," Alex joked as he stepped inside, looking around. I chuckled nervously. "Yeah, about that. Why don't we sit down? Dinner's almost ready." We made small talk as we settled at the dining table, the elaborate spread in front of us a stark contrast to our usual low-key dates. Alex seemed to sense something was off, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced with a look of concern. "Emma, what's going on? You've been acting weird all evening," Alex finally said, setting down his fork. Taking a deep breath, I decided it was now or never. "Alex, there's something I need to tell you. Something important." He leaned in, attentive. "Okay, shoot." "The truth is," I began, my heart pounding, "this house, it's mine. And not just the house. The business I told you I work at? It's actually my company. I inherited it from my parents." For a moment, there was silence. Alex's expression was unreadable, a mixture of surprise, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite place. "You mean, you're rich?" he finally said, his voice a mix of disbelief and curiosity. "Yeah, I am. And I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I wanted to keep things simple. I wanted someone to like me for me, not my money," I explained, bracing myself for his reaction. Alex sat back, processing the news. "Wow, that's a lot to take in. So, every time we talked about your bosses, you were actually talking about yourself?" I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. "Yes. And I understand if you're mad or if you want to leave. I just couldn't keep lying to you." There was a long pause, during which I could almost hear my heart beating. Then, Alex reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "Emma, I won't lie and say I'm not shocked. But I'm not mad. I get why you did it. This world is full of people who would kill to be in your shoes, not for the responsibility, but for the perks. You wanted to avoid that, to find something real. I respect that, he said, his gaze sincere. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, mixed with a twinge of guilt for ever doubting him. Really? You're not upset? Alex shook his head. No. I like you, Emma. Not your money, not your mansion. You. This doesn't change how I feel. His words were like a balm to my frayed nerves. The fear of rejection, of judgment, melted away, leaving a sense of hope and newfound trust between us. Thank you, Alex. That means everything to me, I said, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. We spent the rest of the evening talking openly about my life, my family, and the business. I shared stories I had never told anyone, feeling a connection to Alex that went deeper than before. After I let Alex into the real world of my wealth, things took a turn I didn't expect. He was all in, more than I ever dreamed. One evening, out of the blue, he dropped the question that would change everything. "Marry me, Emma," he said, his eyes shining with something fierce. "Let's do it big, in some jaw-dropping place. Then jet off somewhere, just you and me." The idea set my heart racing. A family with Alex, something real and mine, was all I ever wanted. But his vision of grandeur threw me. "Alex, I love the thought of us, a future," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "But why all the flash? Can't we discover each other without splashing out?" He didn't take it well. The look on his face was like I slapped him. "What, my idea's not good enough?" he shot back, a sharp edge in his voice. "No, it's not that," I hurried to explain. "It's just, I thought, maybe we could keep it simple, focus on us." He scoffed, shaking his head. "Simple. Right. You're probably just too embarrassed to waste your cash on someone like me." That stung. "Alex, stop. It's not about the money. I thought you knew that." He didn't say anything for a moment, just stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Then, without another word, he walked out. He ghosted me for days after that, leaving me to stew in worry and doubt. Had I hurt him that bad? Was I wrong? I couldn't stand the silence and uncertainty. I picked up the phone and dialed his number, my heart pounding in my chest. "Alex?" I said when he finally answered, my voice barely above a whisper. "Emma," he replied, his voice cold, distant. "I'm sorry," I blurted out, the words tumbling out in a rush. "If the wedding you want is what you need, we can talk about it. I miss you." There was a pause, long enough for my heart to sink. Then, slowly, he spoke. "I miss you too. Maybe I pushed too hard. It's just, being with you, it's all so new to me. I got carried away." Relief washed over me, warm and soothing. "It's okay, Alex. We're in this together, right? Let's figure it out, find a middle ground." "Yeah," he said, a hint of the old warmth returning to his voice. "Together." We met up the next day, talked for hours about what we both envisioned for our future. It wasn't easy, navigating the clash of dreams and realities, but we were committed. We agreed to take things slow, to focus on building us, before diving into any lavish plans. Living with Alex in my house started off as a dream. But dreams can get complicated fast, especially when they start messing with reality. Alex settled in quicker than I thought possible, acting like he owned the place. He'd walk around, making plans about changing furniture and fixing up rooms as if it were his personal project. One evening, he dropped a bombshell that caught me completely off guard. "Emma, we need to talk," Alex began, his tone serious, a stark contrast to his usual easygoing self. I paused, sensing the gravity in his voice. Okay, what's up? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He took a deep breath, then let it out, slowly. I've been thinking, about us, about how people see us. I know what it looks like, me moving into your place, all this. He gestured around, encompassing the luxury of the house in one sweeping motion. I frowned, not liking where this was heading. What about it? I asked, a defensive edge creeping into my voice. It's just, I don't want anyone thinking I'm with you for the money, for the house. It makes me feel like a total jerk, he admitted, looking down at his hands. I softened, understanding his concern but unsure of the solution. Alex, you know that's not true. Why does it matter what anyone else thinks? Because it does, Emma. To me, it does. He shot back, frustration lacing his words. I need to know that you trust me, really trust me. And I do, Alex. But what are you getting at? I pressed, a sense of unease growing in my stomach. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine with a resolve I hadn't seen before. I want us to sign a prenup. I'll give up any claim to your property, your money. I don't want a penny if things don't work out. The suggestion took me aback. A prenup? I echoed, the idea swirling in my head. Yeah, a prenup. But there's more, he continued, hesitating before plunging ahead. I think you should give me half of the house. Before the wedding. So I can feel like it's really our home, not just me living in your shadow. The request hit me like a ton of bricks. Give you half of the house? Alex, are you serious? I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. He nodded, earnestly. Yes, I'm serious. It's the only way I'll feel like I'm not just some charity case you're taking care of. I need to feel like an equal in this relationship. The conversation spiraled from there, his words echoing in my head long after we'd stopped talking. The idea of giving Alex the house, of proving my trust in such a tangible, irreversible way, felt daunting. Yet, his plea tugged at my heartstrings. He was convincing, passionate even, about making this work, about us being equals. In a moment of emotional turmoil, I agreed. Okay, Alex. If it means that much to you, we'll do it your way, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Walking out of Mr. Thompson's office, I was still in a daze from what we'd just done. The paperwork, the formalities, it all felt surreal. But the cold slap of reality came faster than I could have imagined. So, Emma, Alex started, his tone light but with an edge that immediately put me on alert. Now that we're partners in this, how about we talk terms? I blinked, confused. Terms? What do you mean? He stopped walking, turning to face me with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Well, you see, I've been thinking. This place, our home, it's worth a pretty penny, right? About $7 million, if I'm not mistaken. I felt a chill run down my spine. Yeah, so? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. So, I figure my half is worth about $3.5 million. And I think it's only fair if you buy me out, he said, the words casual, as if he were discussing the weather. My heart stopped. Buy you out? Alex, what are you talking about? This was supposed to be our home, not an investment. He laughed, a sound that made my stomach turn. Our home? Please, Emma, don't be so naive. I saw an opportunity, and I took it. You can't blame me for playing it smart. I could feel the tears welling up, betrayal mixing with disbelief. But, you said you loved me. That this was about us starting a life together. Love? He scoffed, shaking his head. This was about securing my future, and thanks to you, it's looking pretty bright. I was reeling, each word a blow to my heart. How could you do this to me? Alex waved the property documents in front of my face, his smile cruel. Because, Emma, you made it so easy. I mean, who signs over half their house to someone without a second thought? You really are a fool. The words cut deeper than any knife. I stood there, frozen, as he continued to mock me, laughter echoing off the walls of the world we had built together, a world that was crumbling around me. You'll regret this, I finally managed to say, my voice a whisper. He stopped laughing, his gaze cold and calculating. I doubt it. But hey, if you want to keep living in your precious house, you know what it'll cost you. With that, he walked away, leaving me alone with the ruins of my trust and love. In that moment, I knew I had made a monumental mistake, one that would change the course of my life forever. But as the initial shock faded, replaced by a burning anger and determination, I vowed to fight back. Alex may have thought he won, but this was far from over. Walking back into Mr. Thompson's office felt like stepping into a safe haven after being out in a storm. The look on his face told me he'd been expecting this mess from the get-go. Mr. Thompson, I've messed up big time, I blurted out, barely able to keep my composure. He gestured for me to sit, his demeanor calm and collected. Tell me everything, Emma. And so, I did. Every sordid detail spilled out, my voice shaky but determined. When I finished, Mr. Thompson didn't seem surprised. Instead, he looked thoughtful, almost as if he'd anticipated this all along. Emma, there's something you should know about your father's will, he began, his tone serious. He made it clear that the house would be yours, fully and completely, but only after you're married. Since that hasn't happened, legally, the transaction you made with Alex holds no water. I sat there, stunned, as his words sunk in. So, you're saying, the house is still mine? Alex has no claim to it? Exactly, Mr. Thompson confirmed, a slight smile on his face. Your father was a wise man. He protected you, even from beyond. Relief washed over me, followed by a surge of righteous anger. I want to make Alex regret ever trying this. Is there anything we can do? Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his chin. Well, there's the matter of taxes. If he were the legal owner, he'd be responsible for a hefty sum in property and land taxes. Not to mention, there are restrictions on selling or transferring his share within 3 years of acquisition. A plan began to form in my mind, and with Mr. Thompson's guidance, I knew exactly what to do. I didn't waste any time. Picking up my phone, I dialed Alex, my heart pounding with a mix of nervousness and exhilaration. Alex, we need to talk about the house, I said, my voice steady. He sounded cautious, but smug. What about it, Emma? I took a deep breath and launched into my spiel. According to the law, you're now on the hook for a massive amount in property taxes. And let's not forget the land tax. Oh, and you can't sell or even give away your share for 3 years. So, good luck with that. There was silence on the other end, and I could almost hear the gears in his brain grinding to a halt. This is some kind of joke, right? Alex finally managed, his voice a mixture of disbelief and panic. No joke, Alex. You wanted the house, you got it, along with all its obligations. Enjoy dealing with the IRS, I said, a hint of satisfaction creeping into my voice. Hanging up the phone, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't just about the house or the money. It was about standing up for myself, about not letting someone's greed and manipulation dictate my life. Mr. Thompson smiled approvingly. Well done, Emma. Your father would be proud. That evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the front yard, Alex showed up at my door, a look of desperation plastered across his face. The air between us was thick with tension, the kind that makes your skin crawl. "Emma, listen, I'm sorry," he stammered, avoiding eye contact. "I think you got it all wrong. About the house, the taxes. I need help." I couldn't help but let out a laugh, not because anything was funny, but because of the audacity. The nerve of him, showing up like this after everything. "Sorry? You think a simple sorry is going to cut it after what you pulled?" He shuffled uncomfortably, his eyes darting around, looking for any sign of sympathy. The taxes, Emma. They're going to bury me. You know I can't afford them." Standing there, watching him squirm, a sense of empowerment washed over me. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the documents, the very ones that could have sealed my fate to his. "You want to know about taxes? Let me show you something." With a dramatic flourish, I tore the documents into shreds, letting the pieces flutter to the ground like the first snow of winter. "There. Consider yourself saved from the taxes. This deal? It was never valid. We're not married, Alex. You never had a claim to my house. My dad made sure of that. You're free to go, free from any taxes this house might have saddled you with." The look on his face was priceless, a mix of confusion, relief, and something else, defeat, maybe. He was speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "But, Emma, he started, but I wasn't having any of it." "No buts, Alex. It's over. And just to be clear," I said, stepping closer, my voice low but fierce, "if I see you around here again, I'm calling the cops. Got it?" He nodded, a defeated slump to his shoulders, then turned and walked away, his steps heavy with the weight of his failed scheme. Watching him go, I felt a chapter of my life closing, one I was all too happy to end. As I gathered his belongings, dumping them unceremoniously on the curb, a promise to myself took shape in my mind. Never again would I let myself be so blinded by love or anything else that I ignore the glaring warning signs. I had learned my lesson, a costly one, but one that would guide my steps moving forward.